Hello, and thank you for listening. We're Suzanne Henwood and Liz Peel-Yates, and this is our podcast, Real Wisdom. Real Wisdom is a podcast series exploring the complexity, depth, and reality of using mBit coaching to thrive in the real world.
We're not offering medical, legal, or financial advice, but we are having real, deep, uplifting conversations with amazing people who have persevered through adversity or challenge and who still keep smiling. If you want to know more about how mBit is changing the world one life at a time, listen in. Thank you.
So Liz, we put out an announcement that we were going to be running a podcast called Real Wisdom. And we said bravely that we would come on first and have the conversation with ourselves about our own stories, some of our vulnerabilities, and kind of just show people what to expect if they agree to come and have a conversation with us. So we haven't got this well mapped out or planned. We've had a brief conversation about what might be there, and we're going to let it flow and just see what we come up with. Our aim was, just as a reminder for people listening, we want to get real and authentic about coaching, about mBraining, and about change, that there is no magic bullet, that we have to do the hard yakka, and we have to be real with ourselves, and that sharing that realness, we believe, will inspire other people and encourage them also to get real and deep in their own lives, whether they're mBit coaches or not. What would you add to that in terms of what we're about?
I think that's lovely. Yeah, that describes it beautifully. I think having people's different perspectives on how they have used mBraining as coaches, as clients, and that reminder of how there are some things we can do ourselves, but there are some things that we absolutely need support with, and we as coaches need that reminder as well. There's a real temptation when you are a coach, you're focusing so much on looking after other people and working with other people that it can be a bit of a worry, and you feel like you're doing the work. And we get really, really good at convincing ourselves that we are doing the work, and actually we can't see our own blind spots. We know that that's what we do with other people, but I think hopefully this will be a really good reminder for us as coaches, that there are things that we need support with, and how that, as you were just saying before we came on, how much that can then enrich not only your human becoming, but that of your coaches, and how much better a coach you are when you really walk the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I had an amazing 2-hour session with someone, I'll name them actually, because they were awesome. mBit coach Britta, from Auckland, Britta Christensen, and she was just amazing yesterday and absolutely held that space for me as a client. Did an amazing job. I got such a deep transformational shift yesterday on something that was hooking in and holding me back. And yeah, I'd done a lot of work on that myself, but I chose not to do that on my own. And so I'm absolutely okay with going and getting support from different places. Britta's also a havening coach, so I deliberately chose to work with somebody who had that somatic expertise as well, because I felt like it was something that was hooked into my body at a somatic level. So yeah, we want to be real with ourselves and with the people listening, that yes, we're coaches, we're on that road to mastery, and yet we are still learning. And the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know, which of course is a sign of mastery. So yeah, we thought we'd start by sharing some of our stories, where we're at, how we use mBraining. We don't know where it's going to go. We haven't discussed who's going to go first. So as I'm talking, I'm just going to go, Liz, tell me about some of your story, in terms of that real life complexity of, it's not all rainbows and bright sunshine. Life sometimes throws us real curveballs, and we have to stop and breathe and really work a little bit to get through. Tell us a bit about your story.
So last year I did Master Coach with you last summer, and it was the most, I mean, you saw me, I was practically giddy throughout the whole thing. I couldn't get enough of it. It was amazing, and I felt so inspired and so ready to step up and to step out, and I had a physical reaction to it. My body had literally been vibrating with the anticipation of the course for months. And then after it had finished, I ended up in hospital within weeks, with a sort of undiagnosed gut thing. And as a result of that, I completely lost who I was, my inspiration, my motivation, my very reason for coaching, actually. I didn't lose my confidence, but I felt like I'd lost my way. I didn't want to run my business anymore. I didn't know who it was for. And all of a sudden I felt like authenticity and integrity are kind of my core values. If I literally feel it, if I'm not being me, I can't coach, I can't do anything. It feels so strong for me now. It's so important to me now that I can't function without it. And 4 and a bit years ago, I had breast cancer, and it along with all the hard stuff, it was a really, really positive experience, and it gave me a huge drive and zest for life, and it really inspired me to do all the work I was doing. But then all of a sudden, it was like I had lost that. Like, cancer's so 4 years ago, it's not relevant anymore. Who are you now? And I worked with an amazing coach, MBit coach, in the winter. And what she helped me discover was a fear of being myself, that it wasn't safe to shine, that it wasn't safe to put your head above the parapet and claim everything you said you wanted to do. And I think when we were a master coach, I'd probably for the first time kind of stepped up and gone, I'm ready, I'm in this, I'm doing this. And my body went, no, you're not, it's not safe. And what I realized during the session was that when I had cancer, because no one particularly wants cancer, that it's all right for you to be amazing during that time. People are really inspired by you when you're going through really traumatic experiences, because it makes you brave and inspirational. Whereas if you were being that person without that perhaps more challenging part, that might not be okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And I realized that I hadn't ever really given myself permission to be me. And it shifted everything. It made me realize that actually it wasn't cancer that had made me all bright and shiny and amazing. It was me that was there already. And it was another experience that I got through. It was another opportunity to grow. But what it made me realize is that we get hit so many times. We think we've overcome something, we think we've grown, we think we're okay, and then we get hit by another truck. And it knocked me for 6, but what it's done this time is really helped me realize that actually it's not my positivity and my bouncy tigger-like energy that's the strength. It's actually this really deep resilience that I have and have cultivated over years and years and years of overcoming difficult things. Beautiful. And that I don't need to fear the really hard traumatic times, because I have the tools and I have the emotional, I think, awareness and flexibility I guess to be able to sit in the dark and to have faith that eventually there will be learning and it will be beautiful, rather than pushing it away, rather than not having to feel it, but to ride it like a wave and allow myself to go really deep into it, and not be afraid of pain and anger and anguish and sadness and all the feelings.
So can I interrupt you in the spirit of conversation?
Yeah.
Someone listening who maybe recognizes in themselves a pattern that, you know, life's kind of thrown them that message a few times, and maybe they've done a bit of work and maybe they've moved on and maybe they haven't. How do you do that? How do you be okay deeply reconnecting with yourself to be okay with the Tigger happy bouncy and the Eeyore, oh, another day? What do you physically do to kind of come through that whole experience, not bitter and twisted and angry and hurt and broken and sick, but to come through going, actually, I have this beautiful light inside of me, and it wouldn't be me not to let it shine?
I know this is a conversation about what we've learned with mBraining and MBIT, and it seems like a kind of it's the ability to go inside, and with everything that I've learned, especially with Loving Your Life, with Grant's Loving Your Life program, that way of exploring and cultivating compassion and being able to savor and be curious, to be able to step out of whatever I'm feeling and be curious about that and wonder rather than criticize, or find gratitude rather than fear. Cultivating that ability to know who I truly am, and I think that comes with practice. So you know, every morning waking up and practicing balanced breathing, knowing a bit like when you know with a relationship, that you get to know yourself over time, and you know when you're being true to yourself and when you're not.
So again, for people listening, balanced breathing, they may or may not be mBit coaches, and at mBit coach level we teach the basics of balanced breathing. But as you move towards mastery, I'm guessing that your routine for balanced breathing is more than just sitting, breathing evenly in and out for the same length of time. So what else do you do around that time, as well as maybe even at the same time as your balanced breathing, that creates that strength and connection with yourself, that grounding to start the day?
So I have questions that I ask myself,
Such as?
and not always consciously either anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a bit like prayer, and so it's that connection with God, for want of a better word, for me, knowing that sense that I am part of something much bigger. And so I'll say, what will you have me do? Where will you have me go? What will you have me say, and to whom?
Beautiful. Just say
And
that again.
What will you have me do?
Nice gut.
Where will you have me go?
Gut.
What will you have me say?
Head.
And whom?
Whom, connection, heart. Beautiful. I don't know if you consciously realize that that's head, heart, and gut questions.
And they're not mine. They're not my questions. And that helps me come from a place of service. and takes me out of ego and kind of reconnects to that sense of purpose and of feeling inspired. But it's quite, well,
I was going to say, so I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit. I'm trying to listen with ears that don't do this regularly, that don't understand this practice maybe. So I could do all of that from a list. I could have those questions written out on a sheet of paper, and every morning I could wake up and I could read off that list. But I'm guessing that's not what you do. So how do you come from a much deeper level? How do you take those questions so that they're asking your real, true, deep core identity and your soul for someone who hasn't done this sort of work yet?
So the way, I mean, it's funny how when you learn, when you do the coach certificate, we have the roadmap. We go through, we connect with our heart. And one of the ways I really like to do that is imagine my heart opening up like a peony, like a flower, and just opening and noticing, just feeling it open in the morning is really lovely, like it's waking up with the sun. And it's not as conscious as then taking that to my head and going down to my gut, but it's that once you practice connecting with your heart, finding out what your heart truly wants, taking that to your mind and inviting it to play creatively with what you might want, we then take that to the gut. We then and that, for those who aren't MBIT coaches, it's where our identity is. It's where it's about mobility, it's about safety, who we deeply are at a core level. It's about courage. And most people will have had a sense at some point of great danger. They feel it in their gut when they're on a roller coaster. It's a strong sense. With children, you see a child near the road, you feel it physically. And I think it's about practicing that enough so that you don't have to have that. A bit like driving a car, it's that unconscious competence with it, but then also making a conscious choice to be intentional with it.
So, again, I don't want to take you back into that time 4.5 years ago, but we can practice that and we can do it every day and life can go on. And then a great big curveball comes and hits us in the face, hits us in the guts. So you get a diagnosis of breast cancer. Next morning, how do you wake up and still do that?
It's funny. So I'd never even heard of mBit at that point. I didn't have this language. I wasn't NLP trained either at that point either. I had finished working with my first coach. So what I had learnt about at that point was practicing gratitude. I'd cultivated a practice of gratitude. And the way I started that at the very, very beginning was every morning writing down 3 things I was grateful for and writing them down and why. So I'm grateful for this because. And then every evening before I went to bed, writing down 3 good things about the day. Beautiful. And that was how, by that point, that was, and then I developed that into, let's say, being stuck in the post office in a queue or in Tesco or in a traffic jam. And instead of feeling frustrated, practicing gratitude. And I did that by writing post-its in places where I might get frustrated and putting reminders on my phone so that it then became something that now I don't even have to try. It just is, it's part of who I am now, is finding appreciation amidst challenging things. How about you?
Well, people might say, well, aren't you lucky that you have that mindset? Aren't you lucky that you can turn that into a positive? And I guess I just want to throw back the challenge to them going, it doesn't just happen. You have to make a choice, and you have to do that action over and over and over again, even when you don't feel like it, to get to the point where it looks like it's completely natural and it's part of who you are.
Yeah. And I was really, I'd had a huge breakdown just before I was diagnosed. So at the time I was diagnosed, I was signed off sick, and had been battling, and I use the word battling because I was fighting against it at the time, with depression and anxiety, and trying to practice gratitude and wondering why it wasn't working. But
we can do gratitude at a head level sometimes, eh?
we can.
Or
we
try
can.
to.
We can, but it is something that I worked hard at. It's something that I decided was really important to me, and so I was prepared to work hard at it.
Beautiful.
And
I think that's what people need to hear, right? It takes intention and choice and hard work, and doing it again the next day, and doing it again the next day, and doing it again the next day.
I work with a coach, an MBIT coach, who, and I don't know where she got it from or whether this was hers. She said it's a lifetime commitment and a daily practice, or the other way around.
Beautiful.
And I think that's absolutely right. And it's like anything we do, where, you know, you might go for a massage, or you might go to the spa and it tops you up a little bit, or you might, you know, go for a walk a few times and feel a bit better. But actually, if you stop, or let's say you train for a marathon, when you stop training after the run, you know, your fitness is going to go again. Unless you keep training, your fitness will go again, and so you won't be able to run that marathon. And actually, part of the way I've learned that is by not practicing it every day and feeling the consequences.
Yeah. And sometimes in that moment we make a choice where we think, it's gratitude time, and then we don't do it. And that's the real life, I guess, that we want to explore, in that we're in no way trying to suggest that there's a perfect way forward where, you know, we're all trying to get to that point where we do it every day, and we're always going to have curveballs being thrown at us. We're going to have days where, like Eeyore, we don't necessarily want to get up and come to the party. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's real life too.
Yeah. And I think for a long time, you know, I've gone through phases with writing gratitude journals, and longer and shorter phases when I do and don't, and times when I thought, if I don't write it down, it'll be fine because I don't need to anymore. And then noticing quite quickly how it actually affects, you know, how easy it is to stop doing it mentally.
Yeah.
You've
just done a beautiful advert for my next book, by the way. I don't know if I've told you about my next book.
You haven't told me in detail about your next book. Go on.
It's just gone out to a few people to say, hey, this is the gist of every page, and does it make sense, and what do you think? So it's 100 days of mBraining gratituding. And getting that discipline into the body of every day, guiding people through head, heart and gut and pelvis and ANS of gratitude, with guided questions, reflections. So hopefully by the end of the 100 days, it's in their body, it's in their cells, and it is just natural to them to do that every day.
So what inspired the book?
What inspired the book? I got a beautiful Christmas present from my good friend Karen Falconer from ANLP for Christmas. And it was a gratitude journal that was based on a very simple form of recording every day. And I thought it was absolutely beautiful. It was the perfect gift for me. And I was curious what that would look like if it was an mBraining version of that, and how much more we could offer by having a multi-brain gratitude diary every day. And so that was the inspiration for it. And I'm a strong advocate of gratitude. I do gratitude, yeah, I wouldn't say absolutely every day. I do in my prayers, but I don't write it every day. It was one of my survival mechanisms after the house fire. So I created on Facebook, actually, a beautiful pulling together of stories inspired by a lady called Nikki, who was writing a Facebook post called 1,000 Days of Grace. And she had been diagnosed with breast cancer and every day wrote something of God's blessing in her life. So when the house fire happened, and I was aware of that and was following that Facebook post and page, I created what I called my Phoenix Gratitude Diary. That I would, one, let people know where we were in the process, but also use that as my way of coming back to gratitude when sometimes we didn't feel like it. And it wasn't absolutely every day, but it was regular. And some days it was hard. Some days I had to dig deep and my sarcasm kick in, and I'm really grateful today the builder even got in touch. But it was an absolute key component of setting that mindset to be positive, uplifting, and of getting through that whole event without any stress. So yeah, I'm a strong advocate for gratitude anyway. So the inspiration was dual, I guess, from my own experience of using it, and then from this beautiful book that I got as a gift at Christmas.
Lovely. So you said you do gratitude.
I do gratitude.
How do you do gratitude?
Like you, disciplined, writing, regular, and within my prayers. So also speaking, feeling it, particularly at the end of the day. I tend to do my writing at the beginning of the day, and then at the end of the day it's within prayer. Grateful for things, people, events, whatever comes to mind at that point. And I did start by doing, my initial road into gratitude was one of those very small diaries that maybe had like a little inch per day. And I used to write things in each day. But I quickly found that it wasn't enough space. So I don't limit myself to 3 things, because actually, for most days, it's a lot more than 3.
Yeah.
Especially if you then write that beautiful bit about the why beyond it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it become, so for that was how I started, that kind of 3 things. It's now become more of a journal and appreciation and noticing distance traveled. It's how I practice self-compassion and recognizing where, I'm having a really, really hard day, and instead of comparing myself to the best version of me, I've recognized actually today getting up and head to school on time was epic, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
That I didn't do, what I didn't achieve. So it's become part of, I've incorporated it into other practices that also go towards helping me be really okay with where I am, and honoring the different energy levels that I have, and not needing to be on fire all day every day. Being okay with there being days where I can light up a room and hold space for 100 people, and other days where I literally can't write a text message or speak to anyone.
And that's okay. And loving yourself deeply anyway.
And that takes time and practice.
Oh yeah. So let's explore some of these other questions then that we might be asking our guests in the future. First one, what was your most profound experience of loving your life to date? Oh, maybe I just say that a bit slower. What is the most profound experience of loving your life to date?
I genuinely think it's how I love my son every day. There is something about the way we're able to love our children, I think, that is so open and unconditional and full of grace. And with everything that I've learned through mBraining, through loving your life, I am such a different parent. I literally savor and appreciate him so much more every single day and every moment. Yeah.
Beautiful. I can see it in your face. It's just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
How about you?
Well, for me, most profound experience of loving your life to date. So I think for me, that was probably only about a week ago. So about 10 years ago, maybe not even quite as long as 10, I remember when I did my first ever MBIT coach cert, when you do your chapter 9ing statement at the end, I said to Marvin and Grant, I think I can genuinely say for the first time I love myself. And that was a massive shift for me. And it stuck with me for a long while. But recently, with a few things going on, it was like it was okay, but it wasn't all that I needed, and I couldn't quite work out what was missing. And I had a couple of challenges, and I walked down the beach, and it was like I was still into the temptation of, is it all about me? Am I such a horrible person? Am I truly evil? You know, all those old head-based questions that your head comes up with to try and, be your inner critic. I'm sure lots of people could relate to that. And I was talking to my husband, and I can't remember what he said. He's not a coach. He said something that made me ask myself the question, would I want to have a friend like me? And there was this absolutely deep, gut-based, hell yeah. And that loving me turned into liking me. And the realization that you can love yourself, but not necessarily like yourself. That you can love out of a sense of duty because you should. But liking yourself is an absolute choice. Would you choose to be with you? Would you choose to have a friend like you? So, yeah, my most profound experience to date is probably that one. And it was very recent. And I came out going, hell yeah, I want a friend like me. And making me realize all the positives of that in terms of, what I bring to other people in that kind of relationship. So
That's lovely. That's awesome.
It was a biggie.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah. So I think some of the others we've answered, but one we haven't at the end. And I don't know if I've heard this word before or whether I made it up this morning, but I came up with the question of how do you do MBing? So every day, not as a coach, not as a master coach, as a human becoming. And we've kind of touched on it. But every day, for someone who hasn't yet started this journey, what would your wisdom be about what advice would you give around MBing? That this just becomes part of a beautiful way of loving your life so that you thrive and have vitality and transcend, get through whatever those curveballs are that life throws at you.
I think first of all is being really, really connected to your values, your core values of, what's truly important to you, who you be. who you are becoming, and knowing what they are, and not just knowing what they are, but how you practice them, and being deeply curious about how you can find ways to practice those values, and being willing to take every opportunity to check in with how your body feels about everything. And the way we do that with mBraining is by breathing, by our balanced breathing. But actually, even just imagining breathing into your body and noticing, making a choice about how things feel, it's that proprioception. Does that feel like it brings me closer to who I want to be, or further away from it?
Beautiful.
And somewhere along the line, I made a commitment to honor that every day, to be curious, and to follow that every day, and to notice how and when I do that. And honoring it, honoring that deep commitment to living and practicing my values, and as Brené Brown would say, choosing courage over comfort.
Beautiful. Whoa. Sorry, did you just say how about me?
Yeah.
How about me for MBing? I think for me, as someone who has lived her life being really busy, filling every moment partly as a distraction from whatever's going on, or so I used to pack every minute of every day with doing something in order not to be and not to feel and not to. So my MBing, the biggest shift for me, and the advice I would give people, is to find that space, to stop and pause and literally just be, as not a waste of time, but as an essential component of living in the world. And there are tools and techniques to do that through mindfulness and balanced breathing and all sorts of things. I use, a bowl that sometimes I will sound and listen to the bowl. Whatever you do to bring yourself into that present moment in stillness and quiet. My biggest learning in MBing has been to do that regularly throughout the day, and just literally stop and pause, reflect, connect inward, and then come back out again and do whatever it was you were doing. But that's been a big change for me.
Lovely.
Okay, so thank you. I'm sure we'll share more of our stories as we go on. We've decided that we're going to do like a quick fire round of questions at the end. So let's test them out on each other. And I have cheekily changed one of them as you were talking, inspired by something you said.
Okay.
So first one, what's your real core value?
You've said it. It's integrity.
Beautiful. If you had a favorite saying, meme, or wisdoming, what would it be?
I don't know.
Quick fire round. Come on, if you did know.
Okay. I want to say there are no shoulds.
Awesome.
So that's what I'm going to say.
I love that. No masturbating. Book recommendation.
Gifted Imperfection, Brené Brown.
Oh, beautiful. And if I had a magic wand, if this pen were a magic wand and I could wave it and you could change one thing in the world right now, what would it be?
I would teach everyone self-compassion.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next podcast will be with a guest. We're going to be shoulder tapping a few people if you want to come and have a conversation with us about real life, about your stories, your learning, your wisdoming, your ongoing becoming, in order to inspire others, share mBraining, share coaching, then get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll book you in as a guest further down the line. Both of our core values is integrity. So if you want to have integrity, if you want to be real and honest to your core, come and have a conversation with us, and let's see who we can inspire through that. Thank you for listening in, Liz and Suzanne, The Real Wisdom.